Hello everybody, welcome back to Phyre Haven. Hope you're enjoying your government-mandated self-isolation. Today I wanted to show you my Red Uromastyx. It's a type of lizard in the agamid family. Most people are used to bearded dragons that come from Australia as their starter lizard, which is great. I find that these Uromastyx are just as easy, if not easier. So I'll go over a few things that I find make them very simple pets to own, and you turn a lot of heads when you show people because they're just used to your run-of-the-mill bearded dragon. When they see the spiky tail, they're thinking this thing looks like a dinosaur. So I'll get into some of the care techniques that I use, the diet, the lighting, things of that nature. And by the way, if you hear some scratching and some noises in the background, that's just Phoenix, my bearded dragon. She's got her lights on and her food, so she's getting very active, getting an early start of her day. So let me show you Kiwi and what makes him such an awesome pet. Alright, so one of the things that I find is the most simple and easy about this type of lizard is the substrate that you use. A lot of times with her you can hear her scratching around. I just use linoleum just for the ease of cleaning and disinfecting. With him, he's got one of the easiest substrates. It's birdseed, the substrate you can eat. Can't get any more simple than that. Most people will use slate rock or tile, something rough with edges so that it'll file down their nails and keep them from poking you and scratching you too much. As far as the size of the tank, I think that at least a 40-gallon breeder would be best. If you can give them more space, that would be great. I think they would appreciate more room to walk around. I think it's always good to give them things to climb on, so I went and got a big piece of this grapevine wood, I think it's called. So sometimes I'll catch him up in the top, just basking. A lot of times I'll find him climbing around, jumping off, climbing up through this little hole, and then poking his head out and watching me. Lighting-wise, just like everything, like a bearded dragon to a snake, you're going to want to have some kind of heat. You're going to want to have some type of lighting. With him, I just use, I believe it's a mercury ballasted bulb. I don't remember the exact name. I keep it kind of low so that I can get the heat up to at most 130 degrees, which is like what they have where they're from. He's a red Uromastyx, which comes from North Africa, Niger, the Sahara Desert. There's other Uromastyx that are in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Syria. That's a different type. I think those are the yellow or the ornate. With him, I try to keep it at least 120, at most 130. To get it up to that heat, I have a heat emitter, and I always have a heat gradient, so it's always nice and toasty on one side, and he can escape that heat on the other side where I usually keep his food. And a little bit I'll feed him. Some people will put a water bowl in here. I find it's not really necessary. He's just going to muck it up. He's going to throw seeds in it. He's going to poop in it. They get most of their moisture from their greens anyway. Every so often I might give them a little bit of fruit, but pretty much I just give them a mixed green salad with, butter, lettuce, or arugula, or dandelion leaf. You could really give them anything. Just try to stay away from greens that have oxalates like spinach. You may give it to them if you're just down to nothing and you need to give them something. Sure, give them some spinach, but from what I've read, it's really not good for them. It can give them health problems in the future. And of course you want to give them places to hide. You give them multiple places, whether it's one of these little half-hide logs over here in the corner. Give them some type of something you could find at an aquarium store, but I find them a lot in here. Something to come in and poke his head out. I'm going to give him a little bit of food. I've already prepped prepped his greens. Really, I just rip it up into little tiny pieces. I don't want him to have to choke on it or, you know, have big stringy pieces, so I just rip it up into little tiny pieces. I think he appreciates it. What I typically do to interact and have him socialize is I'll already get the his bowl already ready, and I'll stick it over in the corner for him, away from the heat. But then, just to socialize him a bit, he's used to the routine. When he sees the greens, he's going to come right up, and he's going to want to rip at it, get some of that straight from my hand. And I think it's good to build the relationship with your lizard. He knows he can come to your hand. He knows that after he sees you come in the morning, his lights are on, he knows that some type of positive reinforcement is going to happen. This type of a green, it's got lots of moisture in it. He gets down to the stump, and he doesn't really want much of the stump. He usually just looks at it and he's done with it, so toss that. Go grab another piece. But I try to mix up the different colors so he knows that it's not going to get boring. He's going to enjoy trying different things. I'm sure if I were to give him some type of a new fruit, he'd be all over it because he knows different colors are different things for him to try. I love watching them eat because it's almost like a little turtle. They have that little turtle mouth. It's not the same. It's not that pointy lizard mouth. It's not that snake type of mouth. They just have like a little beaky mouth. I think it's really fun to watch them. Another way that I make sure that he gets enough moisture is on top of just the socialization and hand feeding him, and make sure that I spray a little bit of water, just mist a little bit in there, so as he eats. So if you're eliminating the water bowl, just spray a little bit of water in there, so as he eats, you know he's getting that moisture. Cleanup is pretty easy. He is going to make a little bit of mess. You know, they're not the tidiest eaters, so after they rummage through their food bowl, you're going to have to go in and scoop up little bits of wreckage, I guess. Yeah, he's probably done now. He doesn't want to hand feed anymore. But now that I've kind of built up the hand feeding, he doesn't mind coming over and checking me out. He doesn't mind climbing on me, but they're probably some of the most skittish lizards out there. When I first got him, he didn't want to come anywhere near me. It probably took a good 2-3 months just to get him to come anywhere near my hand, but the more that you interact with them, the more you hand feed them, the more they're willing to accept that your hand is not a threat. Also, something that I do with them is a little technique that I've heard called laddering. One of the things that I think is important when having Uromastyx, and really lizards in general, is a technique that's called laddering. It's instinctual, I think, for us to want to grab down, you know, as they move around and get skittish, that you want to grab, but they have such brittle little bones. You don't want to squish them, you don't want to hurt them, you don't want them to feel like they're being restricted. So you always want to have an open hand with them, and really just constantly hand over hand. And I think they build up a trust. They know that the hand is going to be there. They never really want to jump. They just want to walk. They're constantly going for walkies. So laddering is something that takes a little practice to get used to. It took me a while to not want to clinch and grab down on them. So something important to know. I mean, a bearded dragon, I think you can be, I don't want to say rough, but you can grab onto them. But animals like Uromastyx and geckos and things like that, you want to ladder them. One of the things that I learned that people ought to know about Uromastyx is there is a potential to kind of cross-contaminate when you're touching other reptiles, especially when it comes to when you're handling a Uromastyx and then you go to pick up something like a bearded dragon. I learned this from Clint. He's with Clint's Reptiles. I think he's based out of Lehigh, but I met with him at the Wasatch Reptile Expo. Usually they have those in May and October of every year. With the quarantine, that's been canceled, but he was telling me that they have some type of an enzyme or a bacteria that can pass from a gamete to a gamete. You know, they're both in the same family, they're just different species. But apparently, just like when you don't want to touch raw chicken or eggs and then touch other things, there's a cross-contamination. Same thing happens with Uromastyx. So something to consider. If you actually have a bearded dragon and you want to get a Uromastyx, you're always going to want to wash your hands in between. I don't think you have to get down to where you're getting underneath your fingernails with a brush, but soap and water, you should be good. Just keep that in mind. Because the last thing you want is to not only never know that, but to accidentally do it, and then you find that your bearded dragon is getting sick. I've never actually seen how they get sick, but Clint's a biologist. He's a reptile phenomenal expert. I'm just going to go ahead and say it's never a bad rule of thumb to listen to one of the pros, and you should check the guy out. I learned a lot from him. Probably one of the reasons why I got a Uromastyx was just because one of his top 5 reptiles, which one's best for you, and out of his top 5, these guys rate really highly, so check him out. He's on probably everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You put in Clint's Reptiles, you'll find him. Guarantee it. Just kind of a quick thought I thought about. This is probably one of the only lizards I can think of that people use seeds as a substrate. I think one of the important things about it is it's always a contingency plan. If you are low on greens, you know it's late night and the stores are closed, you just can't get to a place where there's some food, they'll nibble on this. You'll catch them nibbling on it. And I think it kind of like birds, they kind of use it as roughage to grind up stuff in their stomach. I think that's similar to what's going on here. Out in the wild, they don't have a lot that they can eat. They live solely on whatever greenery they can find. They're a type of reptile that doesn't really need to eat insects. I've known people that throw some crickets or mealworms in there, but it's really not necessary. So this is just kind of a secondary food source. They can keep their jaw strong, and they do have strong jaws. I mean, I don't think that they would ever bite you unless it was accidental, but you can tell these guys have a pretty strong jaw. But the seeds are just an awesome thing. I always like when people come over, they check out the aquarium, and they see that there's seeds, and they're just like, what the heck's going on with that? If you enjoyed the video with Kiwi, the Uromastyx, I look forward to showing you some of my other things that I have, invertebrates and other reptiles. Give me a like if you don't mind. Be sure to subscribe so that you can keep in touch with what I have, and hit that bell so you know when I've posted something. This is Phyre Haven.